Good afternoon. My name is Evan Gusto, and today I'll be informing you a little bit about caffeine. So I'll start out with a brief history of myself and how much caffeine I drink and the history that I have with caffeine. So I started drinking caffeine when I was about 14 years old. I would typically drink about a cup of coffee a day, sometimes in the morning before school, sometimes right after school. But I usually avoided Cokes, sweet tea, and energy drinks. But today is a different story. I've become pretty dependent on caffeine to get me through day to day, mostly because of my job and just basic life things. I do drink about a cup of coffee every morning, and then I have a few items I'll show you that I consume on a religious daily basis. So I'll start with my amino energy. This is the biggest thing that I'm addicted to. I have to drink about 4 scoops of this a day, and every 2 scoops is 150 milligrams of caffeine. So I get quite a bit of caffeine. I usually just mix it into a gallon jug, and then I sip on it all day. So yeah, I'm getting hydrated drinking a gallon a day, but as you know, caffeine is a diuretic, so I usually just end up urinating out most of it anyway. I also do consume 1 scoop of pre-workout, which typically has about 200 milligrams of caffeine also. So on average, every day I may get 500 to 600 grams of milligrams of caffeine every day. I've tried to wean myself off, but as you know, and I'll show you, and I'll tell you some of the side effects to caffeine withdrawal. I get really bad headaches, just cloudiness. So as much as I've tried, I can't quite do it. But I'm happy with how I'm doing, and I'll leave it at that. So I am going to inform you on the ways in which caffeine does function within the human body, ranging from younger adolescents up to pregnant women. I'm going to explain a brief history on caffeine, and then I'll tell you about the myth of caffeine addiction. So caffeine functions in the body the same way some drugs do because it does affect the central nervous system. It is in the methylxanthine class. Sorry, I don't really know how to pronounce that word. And it is the most consumed psychoactive drug in the world. And you can go to pubmed.gov to find out more info on that. In the Western society, at least 80% of adults consume enough caffeine every day to affect their brain. I'll give you a brief history on caffeine. The historical origins and the first uses of caffeine are kind of cloudy and they're not really well known, like who the first person that found coffee and started drinking it. But we do know that coffee became really widespread in the 15th and 16th century, and then in the 18th and 19th century it really spread to Europe. Tea, on the other hand, kind of came around a lot earlier in the Ming Dynasty and then really blew up in the 18th century in Britain. It was an upper class drink in Arabia, and you'll see it in some movies, and remained a luxury in Europe until quite recently, a few hundred years ago. Before these drinks were used on a day-to-day basis, though, they were used for more medicinal purposes. So the medical properties of caffeine has kind of been noted to kind of help with certain aspects. So they're in such things as aspirin and stuff like that. And you can also go to pubmed.gov to get more information on that. Caffeine, in case you didn't know, is a naturally occurring stimulant present in over 60 different plants in the world, like coffee beans, tea leaves, koala nuts, which are used to flavor soft drink colas. And there also is the synthetic man-made versions of caffeine, which is stuff that's present in the amino energy that I have and in your pharmaceutical drugs and stuff like that. Your BC powder, stuff that helps with migraines. What caffeine does is it really just helps boost the energy. It helps unclog your mind, kind of helps you focus a little bit. It is a diuretic, so it will cause your body to get rid of water and salt. It does increase the release of stomach acid, which is not a good thing. And it increases your blood pressure and does interfere with calcium absorption. You typically have peak caffeine richness in about 1 hour, and it'll typically stay in your system for about 3 to 4 hours, which is why they say don't consume right before bed because it'll lead to insomnia, sleepless nights, just moving around all day and you can't really sleep. The daily consumption, there's not really a huge recommended value, but they say up to 400 milligrams is usually good and doesn't really have any major side effects for most adults. But too much can lead to shakiness, really bad anxiety, insomnia, dizziness, headaches, and the dependency like I myself have. And then I'll tell you a brief little story. I remember last year when it happened. In 2017, a young man died from a caffeine-induced cardiac event. He consumed 3 caffeinated drinks within a 2-hour window. He had a large Diet Mountain Dew, a cafe latte, and then an energy drink that they didn't list. The doctor said that he was healthy overall, and that just so much caffeine was consumed in such a small time frame that it just basically caused his heart to fail. Um, so that's why it's really important that you monitor how much caffeine that you're consuming and you watch your kids if they're consuming caffeine. I'm going to discuss a little bit about consuming caffeine while you're pregnant because I know some pregnant women don't quite understand. They may not research. Their doctors may not tell them. So caffeine obviously increases your blood pressure and your child's blood pressure and your heart rate. And since it's a diuretic, it'll lead to dehydration. You may be able to handle the digesting of the caffeine itself, but your new baby has not developed fully enough to be able to digest this, so it will have negative side effects. And I have a few facts from AmericanPregnancy.org. There is a high link between caffeine consumption and delayed conception. And then in 2008, a few studies were done, and one study did show that women who consumed 200 milligrams of caffeine a day were twice as likely to have a miscarriage. They didn't quite get enough information, so they didn't follow through with it, but they still recommend that if you are pregnant, to not consume caffeine, period. And then discuss a little bit about consuming caffeine at a young age, because I know energy drinks are the big craze, and usually teenagers are the biggest market of energy drinks. So a couple side effects: it can stunt development, it can make the neural network in the brain less efficient, because at that young age your brain is still developing. It can raise your blood pressure, it can cause the body to lose calcium, which you need at such a young age. And then the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration reported that in 2009, over 13,000 emergency room visits were due to energy drink consumption, and a few were fatal. So caffeine addiction, most experts do say that you can't really become addicted to caffeine, that it's more or less just a dependency. Even though caffeine withdrawal is real, it does not cause the severity of other harmful drug-seeking behaviors like alcohol, cocaine, stuff like that. So most experts don't consider the caffeine dependency to be a serious addiction. We're not necessarily saying it's not an addiction, but it's not a serious addiction. And in conclusion, I would like to just say that caffeine consumption is just widespread. Almost every American adult consumes caffeine on a daily basis. And while, yes, it doesn't have major side effects if consumed in slight moderation, but as you can read in articles and journals and stuff like that, that major consumption can lead to death, especially in adolescents and in pregnant women. So I advise pregnant women to just completely avoid caffeine. And if you're adolescent or your child's drinking a lot of energy drinks, I would like just to just nip it in the bud. It's not worth it. As you can see, a lot of younger folks, they don't really know how much caffeine is enough, so they just keep drinking energy drinks while they're staying up at night, playing video games, stuff like that. So, thank you.